They are not just prisoners. Once legends in the streets, now they haunt the silent corridors of CECOT, El Salvador's fortress prison. Entombed behind concrete and wire, their stories erased, their names forgotten. CECOT stands as a void, where the unforgettable are made to disappear, but what truths lie buried in its shadowed halls? This structure did not rise from a foundation of hope or progress. It was born from a place of profound national despair. In 2022, under the silent shroud of countless nights, a new kind of monument began to take shape on the Salvadoran landscape. This was not a monument built to commemorate heroes or to celebrate a shared history. It was not a place of worship, nor a testament to a peaceful future. Instead, it was a monument to fear itself, an immense and brutalist testament to a society pushed to the very brink of collapse by decades of unrelenting violence and terror. It was a physical manifestation of a nation's desperate cry, no more. CECOT, its official name being the Centro de Confinamiento del Terrorismo, was the ultimate response to an epidemic of chaos orchestrated by the world's most infamous and ruthless gangs. For years, criminal syndicates like MS-13 and Barrio 18 had held the country in a chokehold, turning entire neighborhoods into war zones where extortion, murder, and intimidation were the governing laws. These gangs were more than just criminals. They were a parallel state, a shadow power that corrupted, killed, and controlled with impunity. The government's answer had to be as absolute as the terror they wielded. The scale of the prison is a direct reflection of the scale of the problem it was designed to solve. Sprawling across an immense 410-acre plot of isolated land, CECOT is a self-contained world of punishment. It is divided into 8 separate, hardened modules, each a prison within the prison. The entire compound is protected by a series of formidable perimeter walls, each one layered with a lethal promise, 15,000 volts of electricity surging through its fences. The message is brutally clear and technologically enforced. There is no way in for the unauthorized, and for the inmates there is absolutely no way out. This fortress became the final destination for a staggering number of people. In a state of emergency that shocked the world, El Salvador saw over 70,000 arrests in a breathtakingly short span of just 16 months. Entire communities, once ruled by the ever-present specter of gang violence, were systematically emptied in a series of sweeping, militarized nighttime operations. The men who were rounded up, their faces often illuminated only by the flashlights of soldiers, were taken from the streets they controlled. They were brought here, to this place, for one single stark purpose: to disappear. To understand why a fortress like CECOT was built, we must confront El Salvador's haunted past. Decades of civil war left scars, fractured families, ruined towns, and a generation raised in violence. When peace came, it brought poverty, lost purpose, and a society struggling to heal. Gangs grew from these cracks, offering identity and power to the lost. CECOT stands as a monument to this tragic cycle, a desperate attempt to contain a monster born from history. The Mara Salvatrucha, or MS-13, was born not in El Salvador, but on the sun-scorched streets of Los Angeles. Young Salvadoran refugees, fleeing civil war, formed a brotherhood for survival against rival gangs. They called themselves the Mara Salvatrucha, Mara for gang, Salvatrucha for Salvadoran, and alert. Their reputation for violence grew, and soon, deported members brought this brutal gang culture back to El Salvador. In El Salvador, Mississippi, 13 and Barrio 18 transformed from street gangs into ruthless paramilitary forces. Their violent rivalry turned entire neighborhoods into battlegrounds, holding communities hostage. Ordinary people lived in fear, forced to pay extortion just to survive. With terrifying tattoos and brutal displays of power, the gangs ruled through terror, plunging El Salvador into one of the world's most dangerous places. For years, El Salvador's governments tried everything. Iron-fisted crackdowns, truces, reforms. Nothing worked. The gangs only grew stronger, controlling prisons and terrorizing the streets. In March 2022, a weekend massacre left 87 dead, a direct challenge to the state's authority. President Bukele's government responded with a state of exception, suspending civil liberties and granting sweeping powers to police and military. The goal: total war on gangs. The solution: build a prison so secure it would sever all gang command and break their power for good. CECOT was conceived as the final answer, a fortress to bury the gangs and end the cycle of violence. CECOT was engineered for total isolation, a fortress of concrete and steel built in just 7 months. Surrounded by towering walls, electrified fences, and watchtowers, it's a technological dead zone. No phones, no signals, no escape. Inside, 8 modules hold thousands in windowless, overcrowded cells. No mattresses, constant surveillance, no privacy. Mass trials process detainees by the hundreds, drawing criticism but enabling the state's relentless campaign. CECOT isn't a prison, it's a concrete tomb designed to erase the gang's influence forever. In February 2023, the world watched as thousands of tattooed men were marched, heads bowed, into CECOT, broadcast as a spectacle of state power. Packed into cells, stripped of sunlight and contact, they became symbols of a new order, the architects of chaos now erased. Each transfer was a public nail in the coffin of gang rule, a promise that those inside would never return. The exodus marked the point of no return, a nation casting its demons into a void. But as the doors slammed shut, a new question echoed. What is the true cost of this victory? El Salvador is safer, children play outside, businesses thrive, and homicide rates have plummeted. But this peace comes at a price. Civil liberties suspended, due process abandoned, and the presumption of innocence erased. Supporters call it necessary surgery. Critics call it a dangerous trade of freedom for security. CECOT stands as both a monument to liberation and a warning. When the state decides who is guilty, justice is at risk. Is this peace stable, or just a calm before another storm? The state's dragnet swept up thousands, sometimes on suspicion alone, sometimes for a tattoo. Human rights groups report arbitrary detentions and families left in the dark, searching for vanished loved ones. Tattoos, once gang markers, now mean guilt by association, innocent people caught in the net. Mass trials and lack of oversight raise the specter of wrongful convictions. In the tomb built for monsters, how many innocents have disappeared, sacrificed for the promise of peace? To enter CECOT is to be stripped of everything: identity, possessions, even your name. Prisoners become anonymous, reduced to a number, lost in a sea of white uniforms. There are no visits, no calls, no connection to the outside world. Life is a monotonous cycle, time erased, humanity fading in the sterile hum of the white labyrinth. Despite the hermetic seal that the government has attempted to place on CECOT, stories and whispers inevitably find their way through the cracks. They come from the few official media tours, carefully managed and curated, and from the harrowing accounts of human rights lawyers who have managed to speak with former detainees or the families of the incarcerated. These fragmented reports paint a grim and disturbing picture of what happens in the shadows of the state's official narrative. They speak of a world where the line between security and brutality is dangerously blurred, and where the unseen suffering of the inmates is a constant, unspoken reality. Allegations of abuse and mistreatment are rampant. While the government denies these claims, citing the need for strict discipline, the whispers persist. There are accounts of systematic beatings, of food and water being withheld as a form of collective punishment, and of sick inmates being denied adequate medical care. In an environment completely closed off from independent scrutiny, verifying these claims is nearly impossible. The prison operates as a black box, its internal workings known only to the guards and the prisoners themselves. These rumors create a chilling counter-narrative, one that suggests the price of El Salvador's peace is being paid through the silent, unacknowledged suffering of thousands. The psychological toll of such an existence is, by all accounts, immense. The combination of extreme overcrowding, sensory deprivation, and total isolation is a potent formula for mental collapse. Inmates are trapped not only by the physical walls, but also by their own minds, with no escape from the endless monotony and the constant underlying tension. Reports speak of a pervasive sense of despair, of men losing their grip on reality in a world without time or hope. The prison, in its relentless effort to break the gang's collective spirit, risks shattering the sanity of every individual trapped within its walls, regardless of their guilt or innocence. Even within this abyss, the old world finds a way to echo. The gang structures, though suppressed, have not been entirely erased. Inmates use subtle gestures, coded language, and a complex system of non-verbal cues to communicate, to maintain hierarchies, and to enforce their own brutal codes of conduct within the cells. It is a silent, underground war for control, fought in the margins of the guards' surveillance. These echoes from the abyss are a stark reminder that even in the most secure prison on Earth, the human impulse for power and connection cannot be completely extinguished. It simply mutates, adapting to survive in the harshest of environments. The creation of CECOT and El Salvador's state of exception drew global attention and condemnation from human rights groups and foreign governments. Critics warn Bukele's strategy risks authoritarianism, while supporters see it as a bold solution to rampant crime. The world is divided. CECOT stands as both a symbol of human rights abuse and a beacon of hope for crime-ridden societies. The state of exception and CECOT have transformed Salvadoran society, leaving neighborhoods in transition and reshaping the national identity. The end of gang rule brought hope and economic relief, but also new anxieties and a heavy state presence. As the country debates its future, the true impact on justice, freedom, and daily life remains uncertain, echoing through every layer of El Salvador. Who has the authority to define a monster? For years, gangs like MS-13 were cast as villains, but CECOT's walls draw a hard line: citizen or monster, savable or disposable. By erasing individual stories, the state risked burying its own humanity. It's easier to build a concrete tomb than to confront the conditions that create monsters. The silence from within CECOT is deafening. In the vast, anonymous expanse of CECOT, 40,000 men are stripped of their names, reduced to a faceless mass. But the state made an exception. One voice, Marvin El Psycho Vasquez, was chosen to speak. His story, meant as a warning, became a haunting reflection, more than a monster's confession, but a glimpse into the darkness that shapes El Salvador's tragedy. Marvin Vasquez was not born a monster. He was a child of war's aftermath, growing up in fractured streets, longing for shoes, family, and belonging. The gang gave him all three: shoes, identity, and a family. Their twisted codes became his new religion. His humanity faded. He became El Psycho, a name earned, a reputation that protected and caged him. The boy who wanted shoes was gone. In his place, a ghost haunted the streets, long before prison walls closed in. Marvin Vasquez recounts his life with chilling detachment, a ledger of violence, lost family, and regret. In his bare cell, stripped of power, he longs for a different life. He pleads to the youth, do not follow this path. In the end, the man they called Psycho prays for a second chance he knows will never come. For Marvin Vasquez and 40,000 others in CECOT, life is measured by a rhythm of nothingness, endless repetition, clanging steel doors, and the same meal of rice, beans, and a single tortilla, day after day. There are no windows, only harsh fluorescent lights and the echo of distant metal. In this world, the true sentence is not just the loss of freedom, but the slow erasure of self. Deep within CECOT lies the isolation wing, a place spoken of in hushed tones where punishment cells await those the system seeks to break. These windowless boxes, called pozos, offer only 4 walls, a floor and a ceiling, no bed, no toilet, only a hole in the ground. The solid steel door blocks all light and sound, sealing prisoners in total sensory deprivation. Here, time dissolves and the mind unravels, leaving only a ghost where a person once stood. CECOT is not merely a prison. It stands as a modern-day Omen, an immense monument to both fear and hope in El Salvador. Its silence, once filled with chaos, now stretches from its walls to the streets, bringing a fragile peace. But this quiet comes at a cost. Justice suspended, families left in uncertainty, and a nation forced to weigh the price of order. El Salvador's victory over the gangs is undeniable. Streets are safer, fear has faded. But this peace is written in shadow, haunted by the cost. Liberties suspended, justice blurred, and thousands vanished. The world watches, wondering if this is a new model for safety, or a cautionary tale of freedom lost. As we stand at the end of this chronicle, looking back at the ashes of the Civil War, the bloody streets of Los Angeles, and the rise of the concrete tomb, one final buried question remains. It is the question that lingers long after the headlines fade and the political debates subside. It is a question that probes deeper than legal arguments or security statistics, touching upon the very nature of fear, justice, and memory. The question is not whether CECOT works, but what it represents. Is CECOT the definitive answer to chaos, or has it simply become the enduring shadow of that chaos? On one hand, the prison can be seen as the ultimate answer. It is the logical and perhaps necessary conclusion to a problem that had spiraled so far out of control that conventional solutions were no longer viable. It represents a full stop, a final chapter in a cycle of violence that had consumed the nation for decades. From this perspective, CECOT is the bitter medicine that, while painful, was required to cure a terminal disease. It is the embodiment of order triumphing over anarchy, a necessary evil created to destroy a far greater one, providing a definitive, if brutal, answer to the reign of the gangs. On the other hand, the prison is a shadow. It is a physical manifestation of the same fear that the gangs once wielded, but now institutionalized and wielded by the state. It has not vanquished fear, but merely transferred its source. The shadow of CECOT looms over the nation, a constant reminder of the state's absolute power and the fragility of individual rights. It is a solution that does not resolve the root causes of violence, poverty, lack of opportunity, social fracturing, but simply contains its most violent symptoms. In this light, CECOT is not an answer, but a deferral, a burying of the problem rather than a solving of it. Ultimately, CECOT may be both. It may be the answer for today and the shadow of tomorrow. It has provided a desperately needed respite from violence, a space for the nation to breathe, but the methods it employs and the questions it leaves unanswered cast a long and ominous shadow over the future. The buried question is whether a peace born of such methods can ever be truly lasting, or if, by burying its monsters in a concrete tomb, El Salvador has inadvertently planted the seeds for a different kind of darkness to grow in the years to come. The final judgment is yet to be rendered by history. The story of CECOT, like the ancient scrolls we unearth, is not a simple tale of good versus evil. It is a complex narrative written in shades of grey, a chronicle of desperation, power, and the terrifying choices a society makes when it believes it has no other options left. The fortress in the Salvadoran plains is more than a building. It is a repository of secrets, a place where legends of the street were sent to die, and where new legends of state power were born. It is a story that reveals as much about the watchers as it does about the watched, a mirror reflecting our own anxieties about order and chaos. The names and faces inside, from Marvin Psycho Vasquez to the thousands of anonymous others, have been deliberately erased. They have been consigned to a void, their stories intended to be forgotten. But stories have a way of enduring. They persist in the whispers of families, in the reports of human rights workers, and in the uneasy conscience of a world that witnessed their disappearance. The silence from CECOT is not empty. It is filled with the echoes of these buried lives, a ghostly chorus that will continue to resonate long after the walls have crumbled. For nothing that is hidden remains hidden forever. Here, at the Obsidian Scrolls, we seek out these echoes. We listen for the whispers in the dark corners of history, for the stories that have been deliberately concealed or conveniently forgotten. The tale of CECOT is one such story, a modern myth that speaks to timeless themes of fear, power, and sacrifice. It reminds us that the monuments we build, whether of stone or of silence, tell the world who we are and what we value most. It forces us to question what we choose to remember and what we choose to bury. And so, this scroll must end, but the story continues. The final question is now left to you, the keeper of this knowledge. If you believe that the secrets of this place and the truths it represents were buried for a reason so profound that it should shake us to our core, then let your voice be heard. Add your whisper to the echo. In the comments below, write the 2 words that capture the essence of this entire saga, what they feared. For in understanding their fear, we may come to better understand our own. Until the next scroll is unrolled.